Welcome to CEC Gurukul Lectures. I am Dr. Kumar Shantanu from Department of Botany, Deshbandhu College. In this series of lectures on Archegonety, we have started our discussion with the first land plant, that is bryophytes, the amphibian of the land plants, or the amphibian of the plant kingdom, that is bryophytes. Among various bryophytes, we have categorized the whole group into liverworts, hornworts and mosses. Today we are going to discuss one of the members of liverworts, that is Rixia. We will try to understand and discuss the morphology and anatomy as well as reproductive aspect of Rixia. To begin with, let us understand the systematic position of Rixia. Rixia belongs to division Bryophyta, class Hepaticopsida, order Marchantiales, family Rixiaceae and genus Rixia. As far as the occurrence and habitat of Rixia is concerned, it is most widely distributed member of the family Rixiaceae, and it is named after the Florentine politician P.F. Rixii. Rixia has about 200 different species and is widely distributed. In India, we have about 30 species of Rixia occurring in plains and foothills and other areas. Some of the common Indian species are Rixia cruciata, Rixia glauca, Rixia discolor, reticulata, gangetica, melanospora and crystallina. All these species are terrestrial. They grow on moist, damp soils, except for Rixia fluitans and Rixiocarpus natans, also called as Rixia natans. Both of these species are aquatic in their habitat. In the diagram you can see some of the pictures depicting various species of Rixia. Some of them can grow on a dry terrestrial habitat also. Most of them grow in a rosette structure, and the thallus may look like differently in different Rixia species. These species either grow floating or submerged in water. The figure shows submerged plants of Rixia fluitans and that have been removed from the water and photographed. However, some of the terrestrial species can also tolerate extreme dry conditions. As far as the gametophytic phase of Rixia is concerned, the gametophytic phase is the dominant phase of the life cycle of Rixia. Most of the life cycle is predominated by the gametophytic phase, and the external morphology shows the external morphology of an adult Rixia shows a dorsiventral thallus. The adult gametophyte is dorsiventrally differentiated, prostrate, fleshy, and it shows dichotomous branching. At times, the dichotomies occur so close to each other as to form a typical rosettes, as we can find in Rixia robusta, Rixia hubeneriana, Rixia cruciata and Rixia sorocarpa. However, in species such as Rixia himalayensis, Rixia limbata and Rixia pathankotensis, the spores germinate side by side to produce several patches of thalli that eventually form an aggregated plant cover over a large area. Each branch of the thallus is either wedge shaped. Here we can see different species of Rixia, which are wedge shaped in their outline. They have dichotomous branching and notches at their growing apices. Or the thallus could be linear in structure. Here some of the species, they show very distinct linear thallus. The dorsal surface of the green fleshy thallus is generally thick in the center. Here in the diagram you can see the thickness is much large, which gradually thins, which gradually tapers towards the margin. The thick middle portion has a median groove or furrow on the dorsal surface running through the entire length of the thallus and is termed as midrib. At the distal end of the dorsal groove lies an apical notch or a depression which protects the growing point. The ventral surface of the thallus shows numerous unicellular rhizoids that not only help in attaching the thallus to the substratum, but also help in the uptake of water and minerals. The rhizoids are generally of two types, smooth-walled and tuberculate. The smooth-walled rhizoids are, as the name suggests, smooth-walled, simple and slightly wider. In the smooth-walled rhizoids, the plasma membrane inside the elongated cell wall is not invaginated. Whereas in tuberculate rhizoids, on the other hand, the plasma membrane is invaginated, the rhizoids are thinner and they have peg-like projections in the lumen. Additionally, the ventral surface also bears violet membranous scales. The scales are multicellular, one cell thick and supposed to increase the surface area for absorption. The scales are ephemeral in hygrophilous species, but they are persistent in xerophytic species. And even they are absent in some species like Rixia crystallina. When the scales are present, they generally overlap each other in the apical portion of the thallus. Thus, they are arranged in two rows, one near each lateral margin in the older parts of the scale, appear to be present in two rows because of the thickened midrib. The plant body of Rixia flutens, an aquatic species, is long, narrow, flattened, ribbon-like and exhibits repeated dichotomies. The thallus lacks scales and rhizoids and do not undergo fruiting till the water level lowers and they come in contact with mud at the bottom. The presence of scale at the bottom of or on the ventral side of the thallus also tells us that their primary function is to protect the growing cells of the apices and the margins, which are very delicate. As far as the internal structure of Rixia is concerned, if we look into a vertical section which passed through the thallus, it shows a dorsal groove indicating the midrib. Internally, it is differentiated into two distinct zones: the upper or dorsal assimilatory zone, or also called as photosynthetic zone, whereas a lower or ventral storage zone. The upper or dorsal assimilatory zone or photosynthetic zone consists of loose chlorophyllous parenchymatous cells. These chlorophyllous parenchymatous cells are arranged in vertical columns. Between the parenchymatous columns are present deep and narrow air chambers. Each of these air chambers are therefore bound by 4 to 8 vertical parenchymatous columns of cells. The uppermost cell of each column is pear-shaped and hyaline. These hyaline cells together form the ill-defined and discontinuous upper epidermis. The air chamber helps in free gas exchange for photosynthetically active tissue through rudimentary air pores that are simple intercellular spaces surrounded by 4 to 8 epidermal cells. In the diagram, we can very clearly see that the thallus of Rixia can be roughly divided into 2 different zones. The upper zone, which is photosynthetic, which contains chlorophyll in each of these cells, they are also called as assimilatory zones. Whereas the lower end or lower side of the thallus, they are parenchymatous in nature, they lack chlorophyll, and mostly they perform the storage of photoassimilates. This lower portion is also called as storage region. The assimilatory zone has chlorophyll containing cells. These chlorophyll containing cells, they are arranged longitudinally, lying one above the other, forming a photosynthetic column. These photosynthetic columns, they are compactly arranged throughout the upper surface. The topmost cell of each of these photosynthetic column, they are large and they are compactly arranged and they form the upper epidermal cell. These upper epidermal cells are not continuous, but there are found small, very minute air pores, which you can see here in this diagram. These minute air spaces provide the passage of gases, and these gases are utilized during the process of photosynthesis. In the central portion, we can very clearly see a depression which represents the dorsal groove, and it also represents the midrib of the thallus. On the lowermost surface, or we can see the lower epidermis, on the ventral side lies 2 different types of rhizoids, the smooth-walled rhizoids and tuberculate rhizoids. Tuberculate rhizoids, they have invaginations and they have peg-like invaginations which increases the surface area, and thus they can absorb more amount of water. On the sides of the margin, there are multiple cell scales found. These scales are found on the margins of the thallus, which perform the function of protection to the margins, which are very delicate. In Rixia fluitans, the assimilatory tissue comprises of one-layered chlorophyllous lamella running in various directions and enclosing large polyhedral air chambers. The air chambers are completely closed above by a continuous dorsal epidermis. Here we can see in the diagram that these epidermal cells are continuous in nature and they form air chambers. These chambers could be one of the precursors or predecessors of the air chambers which we will find in another genus of liverwort, that is Markensia. The air chamber formation, there are 2 views about the formation of air chambers. The growth stops in one of the tissues of the thallus in surface area at several points. The parts around these points grow vigorously upward, thus the depressions are produced in these points, and these depressions become quite deep and narrow and eventually become air chambers. The other view is that the air chambers develop schizogenously. These develop in a manner similar to the intercellular spaces of the higher plants. Lower or ventral storage region consists of non-chlorophyllous compact parenchymatous tissues. These cells store starch and water and are the storage region of the thallus. On the lower surface, they are bound by the lower epidermis. Some of these epidermal cells extend as rhizoids. So, rhizoids are nothing but an extension of lower epidermal cells. The rhizoids are unicellular, elongated, hair-like structures. Additionally, multicellular one-cell thick scales also arise from the lower surface. In Rixia, dichotomy is a general phenomenon. At the time of dichotomy, one or two apical cells in the middle ceases to divide, resulting in the separation of the original row of apical cells into two sets of apical initials. Eventually, each set of apical initials functions as the growing point of the newly formed lobe and cuts off more tissue on the lateral sides as compared to the posterior side, resulting in dichotomy becoming increasingly pronounced. Thus, it is the cessation of growth in the middle region of apical cells that leads to dichotomy and formation of two new thallus lobes. The apical portion of the thallus in Rixia has been enlarged to show two old lobes as well as two newly formed lobes with a notch in the center. The gametophyte of Rixia starts reproducing only after it has attained a certain degree of maturity. It reproduces both asexually or vegetatively and sexually. As far as vegetative reproduction in Rixia is concerned, it takes place by following methods. It can take place by the formation of fragments, also termed as fragmentation. In the diagram, we can see that the thallus disintegrates at its posterior end and new fragments are formed. Death and decay in the older portion of the thallus, and especially when it reaches the dichotomy, separates two young branches. These branches then develop and establish into two independent plants. It is very evident in this diagram that a dichotomous thallus starts disintegrating at its posterior end, and when this disintegration reaches to the dichotomy, the two branches gets independent of each other, and each of these branches give rise to a single thallus. So, one thallus now gets divided into two thalli. Sometimes Rixia also reproduces through adventitious branching. In some species of Rixia, like Rixia flutens, some adventitious branches are produced on the ventral surface. These eventually get detached by death and decay of the connecting tissue and get established as new plants. You can see this in the diagram as well, that here new thalli are formed, and sometimes on the ventral side new adventitious branches are also produced. The other method of vegetative reproduction in Rixia is with the help of persistent apices. In Rixia species growing in extreme dry conditions, sometimes whole of the plant dries off except the growing apices, and later on, under suitable conditions of moisture and temperature, these apices then grow and establish into new thalli. Rixia also reproduces with the help of tubers. In some species like Rixia discolor, The apices of the thalli become thickened at the end of the growing season and persists in the soil. These tubers have multiple layers of hygroscopic cells covering the central parenchymatous apical cell. Upon reaching a favorable condition, the hygroscopic outer multi-layered cells, protective cells, they retain water from the surrounding and the central apical cell starts germinating. In Rixia, under suitable environmental conditions, these tubers have the ability to develop into a complete plant. Thus, tubers are not only a means of perennation but also of vegetative multiplication. The cell division at the apices of rhizoids and gemme sometimes take place. In some species, it has been reported that cell division at the apex of young rhizoids result in the formation of a new plant. In some species, these cell divisions at the rhizoid apex result in the formation of gemma-like structures capable of developing into a new plant. As far as sexual reproduction in Rixia is concerned, most of the Rixia species are monoecious, that is, male and female sex organs occur on the same thallus. But some species like Rixia discolor are dioecious, where male and female sex organs are born on different thalli. At maturity, the sex organs lie in the longitudinal groove on the dorsal surface, each of its own cavity in the thallus. Though to begin with, the sex organs develop superficially from the epidermal cells of the thallus in an acropetalous succession, but later the neighboring vegetative tissue grows upward and their position becomes subepidermal. Studies have suggested that the temperature as well as number of hours of light influence the gamete formation. Thus, Rixia is a short day plant and sex organs are produced in the month of November and December mostly. As far as the structure of Antheridium is concerned, the mature Antheridium is a pear-shaped or ovoid body with a short multicellular stalk. It is present in the antheridial chamber. Each antheridial chamber opens at the upper surface by a small pore called as ostiole. The mature archegonium is a flask-shaped structure attached to the thallus with the help of multicellular stalk. The lower portion of the flask is known as venter, which elongates upwards into a slender neck. The neck is surrounded by a single layered sterile jacket which consists of 6 to 9 tiers of elongated cells. At the mouth of the neck are located 4 large cover cells or lid cells. Here we can see the cover cells or the lid cells, and the position of archegonia is always embedded in the storage region of the thallus. In the presence of water, the mature Antheridium absorbs water, ruptures and releases the sperms, which then float freely in the water. Similarly, the neck canal cells and the venter canal cells also disintegrate and form mucilaginous mass in the presence of water. This mucilaginous mass acts as a chemoattractant to the sperms that swim towards the archegonium. The mature sporophyte of Rixia lacks foot and seta. Therefore, the sporophyte is represented by the spherical spore sac, that is the capsule only. The capsule consists of a single layered capsule wall that encloses a mass of spores. The capsule in turn is surrounded by 2 layered protective sheath termed as calyptras. In the diagram, we can very well see a sporophyte of Rixia which has a single jacket also called as amphithecium nurse cells, and inside them are present spore mother cells. At maturity, these spore mother cells, they form spore tetrads. So we can sum up the life cycle of Rixia. The thallus produces Archegonia and Antheridia. Antherizoids fertilize the egg cell, they produce zygote, and this zygote divides, forms spores, and these spores further germinate to give rise to thallus. So we have seen a brief account of the entire phase, morphology, anatomy and reproduction during the life cycle of Rixia. In our next lectures, we will try to understand various aspects of life cycle of mosses such as Funaria and other bryophytes. Thank you so much.